Well, hello and welcome to another movie review from
Forgot I was on camera there.
We'd just like to thank you once again for joining us here on our YouTube channel and of course our Twitch stream. I'm one of your co-hosts, Stephen John McLaughlin. Our other co-host, who is on screen with me, is John Christopher Walsh, who will be taking us through this movie review experience very shortly. And we are joined again with our good friend from across the water, Gianni Damaia, fellow movie burner. We're here to talk about, of course, the Batman. Matt Reeves, the Batman that is.
What we're not going to talk about is that horrendous animated background that makes me look as though I'm dabbling with a shark in the North Atlantic.
Perfectly fine. But
it's terrible. Terrible. I ran out of time. I was going to change it, but I ran out of time.
You know,
I love it.
It's like a scene from Jaws, but
it is, yeah. Wrong movie.
we're just drowning slowly.
And bloody water.
And I literally am.
I'm going to pass it over to John now. Great intro, guys.
You know, I've not even done a fucking topic bar or nothing. This has been so rushed tonight.
I think it's obvious.
My PC has literally killed me tonight. It's just decided I'm going to act like a geriatric dementia patient in palliative care. I'm not going to work. It works perfectly any other night. Not tonight though.
John, before we do move on, this is a spoiler review, guys.
It's a spoiler review.
So if you've not seen the film yet, please save the video and come back and then watch it and you can share your thoughts. You can agree, disagree with us, whatever way you take this film. I'm pretty sure you'll agree with pretty much what we're saying anyway, because we know what we're talking about on this channel. Over to you, John.
Self-praising, no honour, Stephen. I'll let you say that. I will stay firmly in the shadows when you make those references. I often don't know what I'm talking about, and it comes through loud and clear. But there's one guy that certainly does know what he's talking about, and I think that is pretty clear, and that's the guy in the middle there, Gianni. But look, we'll pick your brains in this movie. Gianni, I'm sure, as we go through. I've got a guideline here. We'll not be too sort of tacked onto it. We'll move away from it. It's a free-flowing experience, this review. But needless to say, we'll get into it. The Batman, Matt Reeves. We've been looking forward to this movie, some of us anyway. I'm sure the Marvel fanboys who simply cannot allow themselves to enjoy a DC movie because of tribalism. These same people who get involved in, there's just the tit-for-tat nonsense, the political stuff on social media. You're wasting your time. It's entrenched. Step away from it. Those kind of people wouldn't have been looking forward to this movie. I certainly was. It's Matt Reeves. It's been years in the making. It feels like anyway. Right from the moment they announced Pattinson, I was transfixed by this. They built the cast out. Whoever the casting director is deserves a raise, because they built a tremendous cast here, man. And just as the names were added again and again, my buzz, my anticipation built. Of course, it was 2 years ago, DC fandom, a year and a half ago, we got the first trailer. And it's just been willing this movie to come. And now it's here, we've seen it. I can't believe it. We'll get right into it though, man. What was your thoughts, Gianni? I'll go to you. I'll let you break the ice and maybe speak about what was your anticipation levels? I wasn't initially going to do this, man. I was just going to get right into breaking this story down. But I know what Stephen's anticipation was for this movie. Where were you getting in to see this movie? Was this a movie like us you were really looking forward to? And what was your thoughts or experiences with Matt Reeves maybe before this? Because obviously done the Apes trilogy. Is that something you've seen? Were you excited about that?
Matt Reeves is a legend in my mind already. I don't think he has any misses. I think Cloverfield's amazing. I think Let the Right One In is amazing. I think the Planet of the Apes, his duology of it in particular, are flawless movies. I was so excited for his take on the Batman. And the more I heard about it, the more excited I got. Because at first it was kind of that like, maybe Ben Affleck was going to be the star, which I still would have been really into, but I don't think that Reeves saw his vision there with what that particular take on the character was. But then as these things started to develop more and more, and he was like drawing inspiration from The Long Halloween, one of my favorite comics, drawing inspiration from Hush, which gets a little shout out in this movie, but not really, but Hush is another one of my favorites. Like, he was really trying to do this sort of detective style thriller. And then, obviously the early reviews came out, what was it, I think last week or 2 weeks ago. And there was just no like containing this bundle of excitement over here. So I was super, super excited, I guess, to say the least. Like, I was really.
And it's your experience also, Gianni, with reading the comics, because we've admitted many times, Stephen, I know, has dabbled in the animated movies, and they're maybe a great pathway into bridging that gap between live action content and what's the brilliance that's also been happening for multiple decades on, obviously, the comic book form. What was your experience in watching, maybe, what was it you says, The Long Halloween? Was that, did I mishear you there? Was it Hush? What was your experience knowing about those sort of storylines? What was maybe things you were looking out for going into the theatre, and did anything pop out that you had experienced in the comic book? How did they maybe adapt it? Because that's always something I'm interested in. Obviously, we last were on, we were speaking about your top 10 movies of last year. We spoke about Dune, the adaptation of Dune, and some changes that are necessary to make it work maybe in a different medium. Did you experience that? Did you see the clear inspirations, maybe where he was delving into that comic lore?
You know, it's funny. I saw more inspirations in this movie from like actual noir thrillers or like neo-noir thrillers than I did from actual Batman comics. And I don't think that's a bad thing either, because
you've got to do there's certain thing. You've got to do
I mean, there's certain touches that I think comic book fans would really like and appreciate, and I'm sure that eagle-eyed people who have maybe read The Long Halloween like dozens and dozens of times might pick up on things that maybe I missed or went over my head. But outside of it starting on Halloween night, you know, that's sort of where it ends.
Did you see a Superman costume, by the way? Because I seen a guy in a Superman costume behind the scenes. There was a huge buzz over it. I never spotted it in the movie. I just seen obviously the turnip head guy who was crapping his pants. I seen him.
If I did catch it, I would have been shouting it from the rafters or whatever.
Sort of confirmation, isn't it, that there is other superheroes out there, and they're in the minds of these people. Sorry, I cut you off, Gianni. Apologies.
No, you're fine. I guess what I was getting at was I saw more inspiration from Seven, David Fincher's Seven, than I think I saw from any like of the Batman comics that I read. Not that there's not Batman comic references in this movie. But I'm not as much of a comic reader as I'd like to be. I do love, you know, sort of tentpoles in the medium, but you know, outside of like maybe some of the more abstract or not abstract, but I guess some of the more referential like graphic novels like Saga or The Walking Dead or Watchmen, of course. Yeah. I'm not like super well versed on that type of thing, but. Even still, I mean, it's clearly a movie that's made to satiate a desire from fans to see a different type of Batman. Yeah. We've seen the sort of
camp,
gothic, campy, and then we've seen the really grounded, gritty heist thriller. A chaser kind of Batman, you know what I mean? Like whatever you want to describe it. I mean, that's like sort of like simplifying the Dark Knight, but that's you know ostensibly like what it's chasing after. Yeah. And I think that this really was trying to be. It's a very similar tone to the Nolan verse, but I think that's where the sort of similarities stop. This is very much showcasing him as this is a guy that doesn't just like hide in the shadows. In fact, he just uses the shadows to sort of boost his presence. Yeah, he is the shadows.
How good was that line, by the way? Yeah. I am the shadows, and then he steps out. I'm like, oh,
it's so brilliant.
Loved it.
And the use of the footfalls, the heavy footfalls, like he sort of like constantly sort of stalks his prey almost. Like that's just a very different sort of take. And then, of course, obviously, the thing that everybody's acknowledging so much that everybody seems to really unanimously appreciate, it's just that it has a Batman that is actually a detective. Yep. The world's greatest detective has never really been shown in live action to be a detective. He's just kind of like a dude who like he's pretty much already figured it out, and then he's gonna fight this guy, he's gonna fight that guy, whatever. And this one actually has a sort of mystery, or several mysteries actually, if you really look at it, that are sort of like entangled web of what this type of Gotham is. So it's a really cool
Riddler for you.
I think that's why the running time works in this film, because of it keeps you on edge right to the very end. You know, a lot of people saying, a lot of people saying online, you know, they could have maybe trimmed half an hour off this. I don't think that's true, because even half an hour to go in this film, John, you and I were like at the edge of our seats for the most of that film, and even 2.5 hours in, we want more. I
read something that ended in a great car chase sequence. So when we get that car chase sequence with obviously the Penguin, I'm like,
oh, that was fantastic.
It can't be the end of the movie, man. We've got so much to explore. It can't be. Thankfully, it wasn't. It was about 2/3 into the movie with pretty much an entire act to follow after that. But Stephen, you're absolutely right. The length of this movie I thought was perfect.
Yeah.
And I think what great filmmakers like your Matt Reeves are doing, maybe even your Tarantino to an extent, I can't remember how long Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was, but even the mainstream sort of Marvel movies, they're starting to condition audiences into maybe hanging around in a theatre for a long time. This is what Tarantino wanted like 15 years ago. We sort of double matinee, what was it, Planet Terror, Grindhouse, Rockin' by Robert Rodriguez. He wanted a society that could come in, maybe take a small break and then right back into a theatre, and it was like a 4 or 5 hour experience. They're slowly starting to change that. There was a long time where 2 hours was, and look, 2 hour movies are still maybe the gold standard for certain genres where you don't want to overstay your welcome. I think a horror, maybe a good space opera like Star Wars, 2 hours is a sweet spot. But for movies like this, where you've got loads of thriller, loads of mystery, a host of compelling characters that need to be explored, I feel like 3 hours is a sweet spot. And I'm glad to see Warner Bros. Maybe stepping away from the whole Matt Reeves thing, where they were adamant it had to be 2 hours long. Obviously, not Matt, did I say Matt Reeves? No, Zack Snyder thing, where they were adamant it had to be 2 hours. They were forcing him into that sort of corner. You have to cut it to 2 hours. Now they're giving freedom to the directors to see out their vision, and I think that's something that's really good. And look, right from the start in this movie, we get a monologue, which is something that's not really that often seen in maybe a comic book movie or even a movie of this out period. We get a monologue, I believe it's Robert Pattinson's Wayne, telling a story of Gotham, of the crime and of the corruption, if you like, but of this newfound fear. They look up to the sky, they see the bat signal.
That saves you doing an Origins film though, doesn't it?
It does, yes, Stephen, it does. He's 2 years deep. He is 2 years deep at this point. This isn't a completely new Batman, but he's not a grizzled, wizened Wayne like you'd seen with Affleck's Batman. This is a guy that's a couple of years in, still young, still learning. And for me, that's what this story really in a nutshell is all about. It's the vengeance thing, the theme of that, how that affects the entire city. Multiple people with maybe shared experiences, which we'll get into, I'm sure, in time in this review. But that monologue, I thought that set the tone wonderfully. There was one moment where your man from EastEnders, the guy that played the commissioner, there was a lovely shot of him. It was advertisements everywhere. It was also a take on Times Square in New York, I believe. He's this little screen and he's giving a speech and he's just swarmed by a massive advertisements. For me, that visual summed up what this city was. It was sort of instant gratification, modern society, feeding on things, just shielded from what's going on under the surface. Even more so now, we're seeing it with fucking nonsense in Russia and stuff like that. The dirty money laundering into London and different Western countries. It gets ignored for the latest iPhone, the latest sort of thing to take the populace's attention off of it. I thought they explored that lovely in this. I really did. And when that monologue, just a short little 5-minute monologue, it sets the tone for this movie beautifully. Stephen, what was your thoughts on that? Is that something you enjoyed? Did you like that monologue?
Yeah, John,
and the way that you're hearing his voice, maybe not as Batman, but as Bruce Wayne for the very first time in your ear.
Yeah, I mean, you're stepping into, as you said, year 2, John, so the monologue doesn't really bog you down with a lot of story that we already know. We know how he became Batman. We know how Bruce Wayne's conflicted. We get all that, his relationship with Alfred, his relationship with Commissioner. I don't think it was the Commissioner at this point, was he? Gordon was not.
He was just
I don't know
what he was.
You know, just stepping right into that was the best way possible, just to get right into the film. And as you said, John, before we came on, the film did not stop. I think it maybe took a breather on Alfred's hospital bed. Apart from that, it did not stop. The pace in this film was fantastic. And I liked the fact that they did the monologue. He did it a couple of times, actually.
Done it at the end, it was a great bookend.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was just structured. But, you know, there's always this big thing with Batman's voice as well. A lot of people had issues with Christian Bale, could not understand him. Ben Affleck's was a bit more electronic sounding. So this kind of put that to bed right away by having Robert Pattinson do that narration right at the start. I thought, he sounds amazing. Absolutely amazing.
But he does change it slightly.
Yeah, there is an alteration, of course there is, but it's such a good voice, isn't it?
I tell you though, before I let Gianni in, I did like Affleck's "Tell Me, do you bleed?" I loved that. That was great, man. Listen, you mentioned Affleck, Gianni. I still feel that we have. Obviously, we are getting more of him in the Flash. It's coming up, but he had so much more to give. But look.
Yeah, that guy was cheated out of it. I'm sorry. It's like that, you know, if you want to talk about hype levels, me for Batman v Superman, I was like, as someone who didn't totally love Man of Steel, I was still like, I think Zack Snyder's got on this one. I was seeing the trailers. I was getting like really, really excited. And then, man, I took a lot of people to see that movie. That was the first time I saw it, and I think they were all mad at me, and I was mad at me. Yeah.
But he kind of redeemed himself with that director's cut, didn't he? Just a little bit. Still not a Batman movie for me. Not a Batman movie for me. That's what I was always getting at that in the build up to this. It's been a long time since we've seen an actual out and out Batman movie. So I felt like the society was right for it. And it was in a good place. It was almost like The Force Awakens coming out, even though it wasn't a great movie. Society was receptive to it. They were ready to embrace a new era of that world. It was the same with this. What was your thoughts in the monologue, Gianni? Was that something you were expecting? What did you make of the way he's almost exposition-wise giving us a lowdown with Gotham, where he is just 2 years in?
I was, it's not something I was expecting. It is something I think I was hoping for, because, obviously in comics, you get a lot of the inner sort of monologue of characters like Batman as they calculate through these worlds. And I think that the other major genre that really utilizes voiceover to that particular effect is noir. And so then to have the Batman start and set the tone, not just with the pacing, which you were talking about, not just with the the sort of themes of the commercialization of the Times Square blow up of this type of thing, right? But also just directly addressing that this tone, this take, while it may be similar to things that you may have seen before, this is going to harken back to a much more demure, much more tragic style of Gotham.
I'm glad you're not in this room, Gianni. You'd have been put off. Steven's checking the sound. It's all right. He's just making sure we can hear loud and clear. It's important though what he's doing, to be fair, because we've had issues with technical stuff. Sorry, Gianni, I'll let you back in, man.
No, you're fine.
Let's settle. I'll just go away.
I guess I was really into it. I thought it was a really good decision. If anything, I could have done with more of it, to be honest with you. It's maybe a critique that I would have it. But I thought it was brilliant.
Well, we'll get into that. There is a couple of things I think we should have certainly had more of. And I'm sure we'll dabble with that in maybe 15 minutes or so or something. I don't know how long it's going to take. I'm not put a time on it. It's a silly thing to say. It could be 15 minutes, it could be 50 minutes. I don't know, man. We don't know how much time Gianni's got. We'll not take his time up too much. Be gibbering a little bit more than necessary.
I'll stay as long as I can here.
Well, that's good, man. That's good. Gallery of Villains. Let's get into it. The Gallery of Villains. It was much hyped before this movie came out. The creative decision of Reeves or whoever else is involved in the script to select so many big personalities for a first stint at a Batman movie. We had Carmine Falcone, Selena Kyle in there, who, getting in, we didn't know if she would be a villain or not, because she's notoriously flip-floppy in her personality. She can be a thorn in the side of Batman, but a borderline love interest, an out-and-out love interest for him, maybe in the same movie. And then obviously you've got Penguin in there, you've got the Riddler, huge character who, no green leotard in this movie, and absolutely right that it didn't make an appearance. You had people actually crying out for that green leotard. They were very upset when they seen the sort of duct tape look. Glad that didn't make too much of an appearance, incidentally. That was short-lived. He went to the sort of greens. It almost reminded me of Bane in The Dark Knight Rises, when he takes sort of the stock exchange, he puts on this sort of rugged...
just like a very muted version of the character that you know.
What did you make of the Gallery of Villains, Gianni? What did you think it paid off? Because obviously the issue when you introduce so many big personalities, great actors playing them, like Colin Farrell, Paul Dano, John Turturro in there, Zoe Kravitz. I don't really want to put her into the villains because it is a spoiler review and we're just going to come out and say it. She's not a villain in this movie, man. She's very straight-laced. We'll get into Selena Kyle right after this. Very straight for a Catwoman. So she's not even Catwoman, she's Selena Kyle. She's almost even more formative in this movie than Bruce Wayne. She's very capable. We see that with the safe-breaking moment, but she's not what I expected to be in a couple of years with this character. What was your thoughts on the way they handled it? Did you think he got it right? I say the way they handled it. Did you think Reeves got it right? Did he give them enough screen time to do their thing? Was there anyone maybe cut a raw deal for you? Because I've got an opinion on maybe one character. But how did you feel they handled the villains and or the traditionally villainous characters, because Carmine Falcone's he's a villain, but he isn't. He's a bastard. I'll come out and say it, but he kind of helps the Waynes at one point, doesn't he? In a roundabout way, he kind of helps him. He kind of does.
Falcone's an interesting one because I don't know how much you guys are into like video games and whatnot, but so the Telltale Batman series,
I've played the
uses
Walking Dead
Falcone. Wait, yeah, so it's very similar style. If you play the Walking Dead one, you know exactly how they sort of do it. But a big aspect of that narrative, not to spoil it for anybody, is that Falcone plays much the same role, and the revelations about Falcone and the connections to the Wayne family are very, very similar to the Batman. However, I loved Turturro's take on this character. I thought that it commanded a lot of gravitas without necessarily having to be, mustache twirling or a heavy guy with a cigar. You know what I mean? But talking about heavy guys with cigars, Cobblepot was a really, really welcome sort of presence in this movie, not just because he gave us probably the best action set piece that probably will exist all year, but also because this was really an origin story for him as well. He starts out as the right-hand man to Falcone, and through the sort of different crossbreeds of the narrative, ends up basically taking over the mantle, or that's what they're poising him up for.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think that's a really, really interesting take. And then, of course, you come to the Riddler, who is just one of my favorite villains ever. And
he's so
I really enjoyed this.
He's...
I thought it was a really interesting take here. They kind of have a little commentary on, I mean, I know you guys are across the pond, but, it does feel very Americanized in its relevance to our shootings that we have quite frequently, and particularly with the forums that everybody in Congress continually has to go back to sort of decide whether or not there should be laws that kind of mandate or structure how online websites and social media is allowed to function, whether it's checked or unchecked. And so to have the Riddler in that big sort of subversion of who this character is, or maybe it's more of a revelation of who this character is, just be like this guy who's having his first little grace of internet fame. It's almost funny, and it brings it to this odd, harrowing society where you kind of are realizing that like the underbellies of these characters are sort of really showing to the surface, and these are people that have been ostracized, and he was orphaned, much like Bruce Wayne, and all of the best villains are reflections of the heroes. I've said that to you guys before, and this is no exception to the rule, because I mean he actually truly and honestly believes that him and the Batman are working together the whole movie.
It put me in mind of Heath Ledger's Joker. He had this sick, twisted sort of what reality that he needed the Batman. You complete me. Why would I ever kill you? I need you. They all do. They have that sort of twisted sense that they are on this journey with the hero, but they're different. They're also taking the darker path. I definitely seen that in this movie. I thought it was the yin to the yang. This sort of orphan story, how it can go. I mean, I don't want to say right, because Bruce is certainly not the right path, because he's went down a really weird path himself. He's dealing with vigilantism. He's obviously sort of ostracised, what would you call it? I don't even know. Reclusive figure by day and a vigilante by night. He says that in the monologue. Yeah. I live nocturnal now. Paraphrasing him, obviously, but you're absolutely right. I thought that was interesting, the way they handled that Riddler character. Stephen, I'll let you in. Sorry, Gianni, I cut you off again, man. I'll come back to you. There's loads to say on this. Good. What was your thoughts on the Riddler, on the gallery of villains in general? How did you feel? Did you feel they handled it well? Do you feel that they gave each character enough time to breathe, do its thing? Was it even necessary to give them all enough time to breathe? Because this, for me, from the very get-go, was always a Riddler movie.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, they set the tone in the trailer with the question mark and the latte art, all the stuff with the Riddler. This was a Riddler movie. We tacked on sort of mobster figures, hammering home the corruption that was sort of feeding into him. and making him become this monster. What was your thoughts?
There was no surprise who was going to be the main villain. It was going to be the Riddler, Paul Dano, fantastic actor.
Or Dano, as some people say.
John, you said something coming out of the theatre. It might have been just before. I think we were waiting for an end credit scene.
Question
which
mark.
was
Goodbye.
terrible. Goodbye. You said about Oz / the Penguin. You said I thought it would have been a little bit more, but it kind of suggests to me they're setting things up for the next movie with that character anyway. So I didn't mind that. He was great, by the way. I'm very much more interested in sort of Underworld. I was quite a big fan of the Gotham television series and all these other sort of interesting characters that were more real, if you like, as real as you can get if you're comparing them to the likes of Mr. Freeze or Poison Ivy.
Kill the dinosaurs.
So
the Ice Age.
For me, I think
did it?
Selena Kyle for me, although we're not talking about her in the sort of a villain term or anything like that, John, I did have my suspicions. I kept saying to you, she's up to something. I don't trust her. She's up to something.
Stephen was adamant she was up to something, right up to the point where
she was the rat. I was like, she's the rat.
They had that guy, the little moustache guy that took the punch in the club, I think it was. Stephen was adamant right up to getting into the arena. Yeah. Almost confronting Falcone.
I thought it was going to be some kind of major twist.
She's going to do something.
But
it's her. She didn't.
It shows what I don't know, but John,
Stephen,
there is another villain we've not touched on, and that's of course the unseen Arkham prisoner, who we did not know was Barry Keoghan.
No, I thought it was the Gotham Joker.
Yeah, we didn't know that, and I'm kind of glad, because I said to you, John,
Barry Keoghan
during that scene, I went, bit on the nose. This, I don't like that. The whole laughing thing. I thought that was a nitpick for me. I didn't like that. I've got to be honest with you. It didn't have to be in there. If they're setting up the Joker for future films, he doesn't really need that kind of introduction.
No, but I tell you,
for me anyway.
Barry Keoghan is a fantastic actor. It's really came on the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. I think the first movie I seen him in was Dunkirk, if I'm right in saying that, with Nolan. He is a great actor. He's coming up, so it's an interesting choice. I said to you, Stephen, he could pull it off.
Yeah, definitely.
But I don't know.
Doubt. But for me, Paul Dano's the Riddler was the main villain for me. That was the one that went along to the cinema to see. You must have heard me laughing, John, a few times with his performance, and it wasn't because it was a bad performance. He was channeling Nicolas Cage for me at times.
The first video call,
amazing. Absolutely amazing.
I can't do it. You actually done a good Nick Cage the last time you were on, Gianni. I don't know if you can do it. I think he says something like "goodbye." I was like, "What is going on here, man?" He was maniacal at times. It was
like Nick Cage in Kick-Ass, which we talked about the last time you were on, Gianni, when he was burning to death. That whole speech that he said. That's what it was like. It was like a maniac, and I just thought, this guy's knocked it out of the park.
Did you feel they handled the screen time just right then?
Yeah.
Do you think they got the balance right? Because Falcone was playing the sort of traditional mobster figure. He's got his finger in every pie in the city. He's influencing the police. And then also the Penguin's the right-hand man, as Gianni said. I thought he was like De Niro in this movie, by the way. His mannerisms, his speech. I couldn't believe it was Colin Farrell. It's like, this is Colin Farrell. We've already seen this guy.
But it helps if you know the characters as well. I mean, if I think you're getting into this fresh, if you just crawled under from a rock or something like that over the last 100 years... doesn't make any sense, but and you don't know anything about Batman, I think that would be a lot of information to sort of process. But the fact that we're familiar with these characters, I think they handled it well. That's a short answer.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as I says, I'm blanking his name. Oswald. That's Oswald, isn't it? Yeah. Oswald Cobblepot. I don't know why I was getting Oscar Mosley or whatever in my head there. That's a dodgy sort of guy from England from the 1930s and 40s. Don't want to be speaking about him on here. He's the type of villain you'd want to see taking a bloody nose from Batman. I thought it was different the way they handled that character. And look, the way you sort of unpacked it there, Gianni, you're absolutely right. And he was a guy I was going to say maybe get cut a slight raw deal. But I'm talking nonsense, because you're right. He was in that great car chase sequence. It was fantastic. What an action set piece it was. One of the best chase sequences I've seen in a long, long time. And it was funny at the right moments. And he was obviously playing dumb in the right moments as well. The first time Batman goes into the club, he's like, really? I've never seen this girl before. Oh, is she dead? Or is he dead? I think he was saying. I think they maybe get a balance right with that character. And maybe hindsight, I look at it, it probably was, because they are setting him up for that second movie, potentially.
That wasn't about him, was it?
It wasn't, though, it was about Riddler.
It was more set dressing than anything.
It was. Gianni, I'll let you come back in, man. Did you think they get the balance right in this movie? Because I cut you off, man, and I went off in fucking major tangents. We've been off and had full-on conversations since then. Did you think... I personally think that in the main they did get the balance right with the villains, and that's something that's quite hard to do, because we've seen that in Spider-Man 3 in previous years, bygone years. We've seen them put multiple villains in, and they don't get it right, and the movie feels bloated and unfulfilling. How did you think he nailed it, if indeed he did nail it? Did he nail it?
Yeah, you're dead on. Time and time again, I think that if there's a flaw with a movie that has like this good of a rogues gallery, it's that they don't give the balance any consideration. It just starts to become completely muddled, or they do too much with characters, then characterizations that you hate, like Spider-Man 3, and you're like, why am I watching this take on Venom? I still like
Mr. Freeze.
But yeah, what's going on there?
Yeah.
But I mean, did I think the balance was right in this movie? Yeah, I came away from it. I said to somebody, and I still stand by this. It's that take on the Riddler. I think is so compelling, and it's a catch-22 because you just want more of him. But I feel like if you had too much of him, then it's going to be overplayed, and you're going to be like kind of exhausted by that performance, because it's like Steven was saying, it's a performance that really does sort of milk every ounce of energy that it possibly can. I mean, he does this thing that I keep gushing about because I just think it's such an interesting acting choice, where like because his mask is constricting his breathing so much, when he has the mask off, it's almost like he doesn't remember how to breathe. His mouth is constantly hanging open, and he's like constantly taking in too much air and talking too emphatically, and it's a brilliant choice that like only someone as smart as Paul Dano would really try to incorporate into that character. It's really, really ingenious. I really liked the balance of the villains. I liked it because I thought it set up things in the right places, and I liked it because it made me wanting more of the people that I wanted more of. That being said, I do feel the Joker tease, I agree with you, it's not that I didn't want the tease, but it's that the way it sort of happened felt like it belonged
in... And an credit.
I would say it belonged in Tim Burton's Batman. Almost like... It's almost like a little too... buddy, like, oh, we're two villains and we're in adjacent cells, and let's work together and get back at this city that did us wrong. And like that to me didn't feel like the tone that they had established throughout the whole thing. And I think that Barry Keoghan's the right guy for it, but I don't know if this is the right tease to get us there.
Gotham loves a redemption story.
Yeah, I mean it's gonna be great. I have no doubt, as long as Reeves is helming it. I would like to see a different villain take the center stage though in the second than the Joker, just because we've seen the Joker so many times. Yeah, Mr. Freeze. You keep bringing up Mr. Freeze. I think that would be an awesome villain.
They have to exercise the demons.
That's Matt Reeves' favourite villain. So
there you go, Steve. It's all aligning. How would you make it work though in that sort of darker, more serious, grounded setting? Because with Batman v Robin, it was very comic book, silly, campy nonsense. And I probably loved it as a kid. I'm not even going to sit here and say as a young kid when it was out. I was a young kid and that was out. I probably did love it. I'm not even going to lie. I don't really remember. I try to blank that decade out.
I've watched it a million times. I'm right there with you. No, but the only thing that I think would keep them from doing like Mr. Freeze is because then you kind of have to get rid of the detective aspect. If you have him just like freezing a bunch of stuff and like Batman's coming in and it's like, I wonder who's doing this. The audience is gonna be like, all right, come on, dude. Like it's the guy who's literally ice. That guy. Like that's the dude. So, I don't know if Mr. Freeze would work. I know that the ARG, the online stuff, if you go to that website that they use in the film, there's some teases for the sequel. And right now they're teasing Hugo Strange, which makes sense. I think I would like to just see, if this Rogues Gallery is really going to be, because whatever the sequel is, it's probably going to be these guys competing to take head honcho over Gotham City. I mean, it's pretty much cut off from the rest of the world, and that's a major thing in the comics. That's a major thing in the Arkham games as well. So it's like that. I'm excited for whatever the future holds. I'm really, really excited by what they set up here.
I'm conflicted with the whole Joker reveal though, because though it is a little bit sort of campy OTT, I still, one of my favourite takes on the Joker is Mark Hamill's. Also straight out of sort of animated stuff, the video games, and it is very campy and played up. The laugh is sort of chilling. So part of me, don't know how you'd make it fit, but yeah, I'm conflicted. We've had the really dark sort of method Joker with Heath Ledger. We've had the, I don't even know what Jared Leto was doing. To be fair, he kind of redeemed it in the Snyder Cut, but I mean, look, I spoke about that coming out, by the way. He does get a hard time with it, Jared Leto. He really does, because you're coming hot off the heels of Heath Ledger. It's such a legendary performance. How do you even take that and do something different with it? I mean, it's impossible. It's an impossible task. It's like David Moyes, to use a football analogy, coming in after Alex Ferguson. Just give it up. Forget about it. It's not going to happen, man. You're done. Yeah. You're doomed, mate. And that was him. So maybe he'll just... You mentioned why am I saying Dr. Freeze? Mr. Freeze. It is Mr. Freeze, isn't it?
Mr. Freeze, yeah.
Mr. Freeze. I'm having a fucking breakdown there. It's like, I'm having a stroke. It's definitely Mr. Freeze. You mentioned him. Sometimes we need a good exorcism with these sort of characters. And we've certainly had that with Jared Leto. We can now go into business as usual. Whether it's with Keo and whatever, I don't know whether that is something we'll explore moving forward. We've got a comment, by the way. I'll let you read it.
Yeah, I'm dealing with it, don't worry.
Speaking about villains, man, we'll get into the actual... I think we've done the Riddler pretty good there, albeit we've not really mentioned the riddles themselves. I thought it was really intelligent. And the way he constantly addressed the Batman, it always felt like he was being very pointed. To the point where, Stephen, I says to you about a third of the way into the movie, he knows his identity. Yeah. He knows who Batman is. They kind of portrayed it, though, as it being a eureka moment late in the movie, where he's like,
did they not turn out, I might have picked it up wrong, did they not turn out that he didn't know him? It was... Yeah,
it was as if he realised late on, that's him.
Yeah.
That's him. But I always had the sense that he knew who Batman's identity was from the get-go, and he was toying with him. That's what, and the fact he was constantly addressing the Batman. Maybe it was just because they shared the... Batman was getting called Vengeance in this movie for nearly the entire movie. I think they mentioned the Batman, cards aside, maybe twice in the whole movie. So maybe he just identified this vengeance mission he shared with this dark, sort of shadowy character. And he thought, I see what he's doing there. I can connect with that. I want vengeance. I want to hit back at authority, hit back at these corrupt figures who are meant to be the upstanding sort of citizens of the world. I don't know, I'm giving crap, you know what I mean? What did you make of the riddles in this, man, before we move on to another villain? Because there's a couple. I'll just speak about the characters in general.
It kind of highlighted that, and it kind of made me realise, John, I'm not a very smart man.
I shite at riddles, man. I'll say that far out.
I was like the DA who was played by Peter Sarsgaard.
He was me.
Please say it again. Because I'm like, I
was
cannot
me.
process that.
I tell you, man, as a fan of Tolkien, I've mentioned it many times, reading The Hobbit, and never once, I'd have been dead. If Gollum had me under that mountain, rhyming those riddles off, I would have been dead, man. I'd have been skeletons in that pool. It'd have been over. Bilbo was very smart.
I think about that every day. I think about how I would not have gotten the first riddle, and I certainly wouldn't be able to tell any riddles back to Gollum.
No chance. But that's that's intelligence in the writing. That shows the sort of common thread. He was once some byproduct of a hobbit, and they shared that sort of bedevilment, that purpose, if you like, that ancestry. Yeah. I digress, man. Yeah, I liked the riddles. I did. I enjoyed it. You're going to put the Riddler in there. He has to be very cerebral. He has to be a step ahead. He has to tease the characters. And he's teasing right at the very end. The stuff under the actual carpet. He gives the bat. He pretty much tells him, this is a carpet lifter, bitch. There's a bat. This is for you. Lift the carpet up. And it even says it in the end, in the interrogation. He's like, oh, you're not as smart as I thought you were. And he has to get back and think about it. I thought the riddles were very good. I thought, without retreading, Dano was absolutely outstanding in this, man. I knew he would be. He was perfect for the role. You says he kind of looked a bit sex register. Ish, you know. He looked as though he was on the register over here. I don't know if you've got a similar thing over in the States, Gianni, but it's our list of known individuals that you keep the fuck away from children.
Yeah.
He kind of looked like that. The glasses. He
did have that vibe off him, yeah.
The shaved look, the hair. Don't get me wrong, he's got better hair than me. But he did. But look, that's Dano, man. And he takes the lack of sort of physical stature. He says that at one point, look, I'm not strong and big like you. I'm just, it's up here for me. I just thought he handled it perfectly. Yeah. That's how you play a Riddler.
He never got his pumpkin pie.
He never did get his pumpkin pie, but he left some stunning latte art. And as a man who likes a good latte and who's tried his hand at latte art, I can tell you that is no mean feat. Doing that little, I mean, he didn't do it. He just
a lot of free time.
Selina Kyle. We'll get into Selina. What was your thoughts on the handling of Selina in this? I thought it was a very different take on the character, but then in many ways similar. And this is a common theme throughout this. You can see they were speaking about it before the movie came out, the actors, how they were drawing inspiration from previous takes on these characters, but also try to lend their own unique, performance to it. I got this with the actual Selina Kyle, albeit not as much sort of catsuit, heavily leather stuff going on. She did wear it, to be fair, but not as often as we've seen in previous ones. And Jeffrey Wright, again, the more it changes, the more it stays the same. Commissioner or Gordon in this case. It's different, but it's the same. There's elements within a character that you can't really change. How did you think, so I'll go to you, Stephen, Selina Kyle, how did you like the handling of her character? Because she felt quite... She was obviously very capable. We see that. She's very athletic. She's diving off the side of the building. She's opening up safes. She's hanging out with these gangster sort of guys in the heart of the sort of den in this huge nightclub. Yeah. But at the same time, she felt vulnerable as well.
Yeah, but
that's points. And I thought
what, you've got to commend the writers for, John. They've gave the character purpose, and very similar to Anne Hathaway's in The Dark Knight Rises, where it's nothing like the Michelle Pfeiffer version of the character. That's too on the nose, but I like that. That's the realism of a Matt Reeves film, and I think that Zoe Kravitz was fantastic in this film. I think she was fantastic in the role, and I think
ages me, by the way. What the fuck's that about? She looks about 10 years younger than me. I'm like, there's no chance she's the same
when you look at her and you look at the Bruce Wayne character, they're sort of at this point in their lives, their paths are very mirrored, and they have reason for doing what they're doing as well. I always felt with the Anne Hathaway one that she was in debt. That was as interesting as it got. For this one, there was a purpose. I think the reveal, obviously, who her father was very different to what we've seen before in a Batman film as well. And it really did. It was a bit of a jaw-dropping moment when she said that. And I think all through the film, John, I think when I'm probably alone when I say this, but I couldn't trust her for the whole film, and I think it's just probably because of the previous versions of the character. You said, John, she's a bit like an Alex Krycek character from the X-Files who flips and flops, changes sides, blows like the wind. But I think once we knew per episode about her friend, we knew about who her father was, it kind of gave her a bit more what would be the word?
Complexity,
but believability as well. She wasn't just as Gianni said earlier on, twirling a moustache type villain. She wasn't a villain. She was a complex character, but she was fantastic. Yeah.
Hey, listen, I was going to get into it, but I felt a bit awkward mentioning it. But they kind of do hammer this home. The sort of raw, primal sexuality of the energy of a Catwoman character. And they're not very subtle with it. They put this sort of cool contact lens technology in her. She goes into the club, all the eyes are on her. I thought that was an important scene for young guys getting in and watching that movie, just to check at times your behaviour. If you like to look at a lady, absolutely fine, but don't make them feel uncomfortable. And you kind of get that from her perspective. It's like all the eyes, these creepy old guys looking at her. I thought that was a great scene, by the way. One of the standouts in terms of the way they were connecting with each other. Bruce was in the ear of Selina. He say, no, you have to look back. She's like, do I have to? Because he comes over. Obviously, Peter Sarsgaard, he comes over, and there's just the awkwardness of that conversation. I thought that was great. But there's always that edge to that character, I feel, and it's obviously something that's been prevalent in previous ones. You've got Anne Hathaway putting the leg up on, choking the guy out with the heel. Halle Berry, I can never say her name, by the way. Halle Berry, is it? I don't know why I struggle. Michelle Pfeiffer, you've got, I'm not going to say Carmen, whatever her name is from Gotham, because she's just a fairly youngish person when she was playing that character, so that shouldn't have any of that raw sexuality. That'd be fucking weird if it did. But I felt they handled it well with this take. Zoe Kravitz has got away about a lot of shoulder shots.
Yeah.
Bizarrely, but she seems to pull it off. She has that edge to her. I thought the performance was compelling for me. Didn't flip-flop like I thought she would. Very straight-edged, straight-laced if you'd like. Pretty linear journey for her. She was wronged. Her friend get killed. She had a bone to pick with Falcone anyway, and it was pretty obvious. You see her in the club, she meets him. It's very awkward. I liked the way they handled the character, personally. I thought it was interesting, the sort of romance between her and Bruce. Bruce felt very awkward in this movie for me. Not at all like your Christian Bale philanthropist, sort of billionaire playboy, very cocksure out in public. Obviously this twisted, sort of troubled man in the shadows. He genuinely felt very emo, very reclusive, bit of a weirdo, to be honest with you. And look, that's fine, he delved into it and he really played into it, Pants, and I feel that's what Panson's like in many ways. He is a bit shy, a bit introverted. Gianni, how did you feel they handled that? Do you feel they got that? What was your thoughts on the relationship between her and Bruce? Because there always seemed to be that energy. They made the eye contact. They seem to have that from the very moment. I think he's grilling Penguin in the club. They had that moment, that sort of locking of eyes. You felt there was that connection. How did you like the handling of Selina Kyle? I'm not even going to call her Catwoman. She is a crazy Catwoman. She's got about 50 strays in her apartment. But she's not really, I says it earlier, I don't feel like she is Catwoman yet. She's just Selina Kyle growing into that Catwoman mantra.
She does say the line at the end, doesn't she?
She does, yeah. She kind of is Catwoman at the end in Glasgow, by the way, in the Necropolis. How did you feel they handled Selina Kyle in this movie? Do you feel that she maybe should have been a bit flip-floppy? Did you like that? Did you think it was straight-edged, like we maybe do, in the relationship with obviously Bruce Wayne in this movie? Did you like that?
Yeah, I was really into. Zoe Kravitz, I thought did a fantastic job, and she's an actress who every time I've seen her, she's gotten better, and I really do admire her for that. I think that you hit the nail on the head with the sort of the seeing through her eyes, seeing how frequently these people sort of objectify her was really interesting. But I also really liked that they also make a pretty overt reference to try to point out the class divide between her and Bruce as well, where it's like she doesn't have any of the money for any of the technology that he has. She doesn't have any of the money for the luxury of being able to sort of fight crime at the scale that he can. But she still persists, and that's what makes her a really compelling hero. Is that she could still do the things he can do, but she does it, for cheap. She does it because she's poor and she lives in an apartment like me. You know what I mean? It's like, I think that is also a really interesting thing. And she makes some pretty direct comments as well, talking about, how he has a sort of privileged perspective on like the way he sort of views the world. Even so much so as like the emotional part of it as well, because the one real flip-flop that she throws in there is probably the most compelling narrative moment for both of their characters. And it's when she has the guy on the roof who has killed her friend, and she had one goal in this. Yeah. She was on the path of righteousness, but she was on the path because their paths aligned. She wanted to find out what happened to her friend, and she wanted to make it right. In a moment, he's vengeance. Yeah, he's vengeance, so to speak. But she has the gun to this guy's fucking head for what he did to her friend, right? Yeah. So I think that ultimately, while yes, she doesn't necessarily flip flop as much as we maybe anticipated. She's certainly not as a divisive character as Anne Hathaway's version of Catwoman, for instance.
Yeah, she was very evasive.
Yeah.
Like, annoying at times, and it still winds me up to this day that she killed Bane. Just, it's not even that she killed Bane, it was just the way Bane went out. It's like, come on.
But he wasn't the main villain. It turned out he wasn't.
Yeah, I didn't mind that. I didn't mind Talia al Ghul or whatever, but it's like, fucking
Yeah.
he dies like that, really? Come on.
Ultimately, like, I mean, she is someone who, she's out for what she needs, right? She's out for her interests at the end of the day, and that is still like the sort of true through line of that character and how she's written.
Yeah.
And so we talk about how it's an origin story for Cobblepot. It is, in a sense, an origin story for Bruce Wayne, even though we're coming into him at his 2-year mark. This is probably the most tested he's ever been. It's an origin story for Gotham, especially for this next phase of Gotham, because if anyone loses in this film, it's Gotham City.
Yeah.
Gotham City is literally underwater and probably going to be just raided by crime. It's also an origin story for Selena Kyle, in the sense that, while yes, she's aligned with Bruce on this particular mission, and they have their tiffs and they have their disagreements about certain things. If she were to come back into this story and their interests weren't aligned, she's a villain.
Yeah.
Only because Bruce Wayne is a hero, right? Or Batman is a hero, right? So I think that what they've done to establish this character is perfect, because it has an emotional connection to our hero. She has a sort of emotional connection to the audience, because we can relate to her a lot more easily than someone like Bruce Wayne, who is a billionaire. And she has the ability to understandably go for what she needs. So in a sense, whenever the sequel comes, and if she is a little bit more flippant, we as an audience are going to be like, oh no, I get why you're doing it, but oh, I don't want you to do that. And that's the best type of villain, is the one that we can really empathize and sympathize with,
and that's
even align with.
And that's why Eddie Brock coming into the MCU is going to be a moment if it happens, because you've bonded with the character. Whether you love the movies or not, it's another thing. But to flesh out a villain over his own movies and then bring him in and he's the actual villain of a piece, that'll be quite a moral sort of conundrum for the audience. Who'd you back in that instance? Listen, I'll get into Gotham City Police here, because I think they're quite a big issue in this movie. They're the sort of upkeepers of law, if you'd like. And obviously the corruption seeping into there, that's quite a fundamental part of the story. The commissioner gets done in, I'm pretty sure he does anyway, he gets his face eaten away by rats. Obviously the DA's involved. And there's a lots of sort of really interesting moments. I think one of the more interesting scenes in this entire movie comes when Batman gets knocked out with the blast at the funeral. We'll get into that funeral scene, by the way. What a moment that was, man. Jesus Christ. We'll do standout scenes. I think you know what mine is. There's a couple, but that's funeral scene. Unbelievable. But the moment in the police station when he's knocked out, he comes to, the room's fucking packed with officers and commissioners. The only guy, or Gordon's the only guy in there fighting his corner. I thought that was brilliant. That just again taps into the fact they're in Falcone's pocket, or Falcone, I think Stockman called him. I think that's maybe the comic book pronunciation, I don't know. I've always called him Falcone. It tapped into that in that scene for me. They all are against this guy. I couldn't really believe the hatred that Gotham City Police had for Batman in this movie. He's 2 years deep into this vigilanteism, and they could not stand this guy.
You got to remember, John, that half the cops, maybe even more, were corrupt.
They hated the fact that Gordon was linking with him as well, Steve.
Yeah, but I think they know Gordon and the type of person he is, that he's not one of them, you know, and the fact that he's got Batman at his side going into the crime scene and looking at evidence, that's going to rub them up the wrong way anyway. But I think they're obviously,
that's another moment.
I think they're on edge because of his presence throughout the film anyway, because half of them are bent, you know, so.
And they're completely useless. You says it, Gianni, you're tapping into this greatest detective in the world sort of thing. One of the first moments when obviously the mayor gets killed by, we're not even spoke about the mayor, the first moment the Riddler comes into this movie, what a moment, man. He's standing centre behind him. I'm like, have I fucking seen that? I didn't take my glasses. I'm like, am I seeing things? It looked like some twisted demonic Mothman guy standing in the middle of the room. He was so quiet. It was unnerving when he struck. And they do that thing. We've been speaking about it, and All of Us Are Dead. We were reacting to that great zombie Korean TV show just now, where they put the audience in the perspective of a villain.
Yeah.
And it makes you feel uneasy. You feel like you have some sort of connection to the actions he's committing, and it makes you feel a bit uneasy. I always love it when they do that. They change the perspective and switch it up. You hear his breathing, makes you feel dirty. But I loved that scene, by the way. That was incredible. But just what comes after that, with him coming into the crime scene, he just shows the police up. They're uneasy in his presence, but he's seeing everything. He's spotting the blood, the footsteps, everything he sees, everything. I love that. What did you make about Gotham City Police? What did you make, Gianni, about the police in this? Because we're getting a spin-off TV show focusing on this police. I don't know if it's before the events of this movie or after, because if it's after, then it's going to be a more clean-cut, less corrupt version. I'd like to see it before the events, during the first 2 years of Batman, where it's very corrupt, maybe bickering, a lot of backstabbing, people try to get on the right side of Falcone, stuff like that. I just found that the presence of the police in this to be very interesting in this movie. The DA was corrupt as hell. The commissioner was a joker. He was in the pocket of Maroni, I think, Falcone. There was lots of stuff going on in there. What did you make about the police in this? And what was your thoughts on that scene where Gordon buys the punch? I was fucking howling at that. I thought that was hilarious. Pulled your punch a bit. I did.
I think that in light of a lot of recent things, people's relationship in America, in particular with police, is a little strained. And so seeing them in this movie, I did find it very interesting. Just like sort of how deep seated it seemed to go. Because at a certain point, you get to like somewhere in like the hour and a half mark, and it's like, oh my God, like every single guy could be in it. I mean,
the entire DA fucking department were in that club at one point. It's like, what's going on here?
When she's going through and the eye contact is cataloging every single person, you're like, oh my God, like at the very least, they're all drug addicts. Like, and that's like the least. It's like crazy. But so I think the part that lost a little bit of that intrigue for me was that moment when Falcone comes out and he's finally has Falcone in handcuffs, and Falcone's talking big posture game about how none of them are gonna catch him. Yeah. Or like none of this is gonna stick, and like all the police officers are in his pocket and it's not gonna do anything. Then they come out of the door and the whole outfit is pretty much there, right? And I think for me that was the moment where I was like, oh, but all of that intrigue, all of that world building of establishing these people as seedy, establishing like where's the line of trust, all of that kind of goes away for this moment that subverts the expectation of Falcone and the audience. And it did feel a bit cheap to me, particularly with how intriguing it was in the setup of the whole thing. Now, on the topic of Gordon, I think, I can't remember which one of you said it, but I think whoever it was, you hit the nail on the head, where it was like, it's the same characterization that we've seen before, but even that still works, right? Yeah. Like, this is the same Gordon that we're familiar with. It's the same basic character dynamic, but a lot of their scenes, it's like a buddy cop movie for most of it.
Yeah, they play it as jokes at times.
They really take inspiration from Seven, which I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, if you look at like just the plot, like just beat for beat across both of those movies, you take out, obviously like a lot of the middle chunk of the Batman, you pretty much have Seven, the remake, which is fine by me because Seven is an amazing movie.
And you've not got Kevin Spacey in there, so that's good.
But literally right down to the villain giving himself up to the police, knowing that his plans already worked. The same beats pretty much happen all the way throughout. And what I do really like about it is that, you get a lot of who Gordon is as a person through this plot, through this cop work, right? Through something that is like ostensibly not something that the everyday person can relate to. We still get who Gordon is as a character. And I think that's just really smart, just narrative writing in how we sort of develop these people. You get a lot of who the Batman is too as well. I think if I do have a criticism to levy against the Batman, I would say that I feel like there's not really any difference between Bruce Wayne and the Batman. And I think that that's by design, but I think it's a mistake in the design choice because
I've got a theory on that that I'll get into.
I mean, I'm sure that what it's setting up for is it's likely another origin. You're going to be the origin story to Bruce Wayne. Like, how's Bruce Wayne now going to become like the philanthropist, billionaire, suave, smooth guy as we know him? I'm sure that's where they're going with it. And what I did like is that I think the movie's very true to that choice. Like, the few times you see Wayne Manor, it is showing it to be pretty much untouched. And I like that. From a production design standpoint, it is really clever to sort of have the set piece of this manor be basically barren. What does he care about the millions and billions of dollars that he has? Nothing.
Yeah, he's doing nothing to sustain it. Yeah,
this character in particular has no care in the world of where he lives. And I think that really shows in the production design. And I think that production design really caters to that character. I think that's really smart choice. What I don't think is a smart choice, though, is I don't think that to say. My friend actually put this brilliantly. He said that they make a clear point of the Batman is the person and Bruce Wayne is the mask.
Yeah.
But if that's the case, then Bruce Wayne needs to be a mask. Because as it stands now, Bruce Wayne is the same dude. He just doesn't have a cowl on. Yeah. He's just as depressed.
And he's still getting eye paint. So there's that sort of connection. Even when he's Wayne, he's getting that bridging connection to Batman. He's still getting the eye paint. I like the fact they left the eye paint on. By the way, Stockman mentioned that they even went as far in the Keaton Batman movies to actually remove it before they took the cowl off.
Well, yeah.
So I'm glad they left that on because that's more realistic. What he says about Gordon, I actually think it's bang on, man. For me, Gordon has always been the moral linchpin in these Batman movies. Batman can be morally topsy-turvy at times. I mean, he always has a no-kill policy, but there's places he'll go that Gordon won't go. There's I mean, what we were talking about it, Steve, in the little group therapy sessions, the Joker scene. Yeah. He has no jurisdictions. He'll go anywhere, and he's a squealer.
I couldn't imagine Jim Gordon dropping Maroney off a second floor building just to break his legs. No. You know, I don't think he would go that far. You know,
no, there's places he won't go. He's always that moral linchpin. He's the true sort of goodness in Gotham, and you get that with Jeffrey Wright's character. He is truly good. He's just, and Batman says it to him at one point. He says, "I was involved in that Maroney case." Yeah, but he's not after you. Why not? Because you're not corrupt. And that, I think, is the key to a good Gordon cat. I mean, a good Gordon, they're all like that. I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't want to have to bury another Batman come into my head there from the road trip or the trip. That's what I always like about Gordon. And that's why I wasn't concerned at all about trying to go off in different directions with characters. Look, it's absolutely fine what actor you get into play. If the actual fundamentals of the character are there and they're true to the actual comics, the animated stuff, maybe even previous movies, then it's going to be true to what we've seen before. And I'm gibbering shite here because I've been drinking too much beer. So I'm going to let you in, Stephen, to share your thoughts. If Gianni's not got something to say, I'm always dangerous. I always nearly slip off and fucking talk absolute nonsense. So I'll shut up.
I just wanted to
I love Gordon, that's what I'm saying.
Well, I forgot to mention my favorite joke in the movie and my favorite Gordon moment are the same. It's when it's a pretty much direct reference to Batman's line in Dark Knight Rises, where he says to Anne Hathaway's character, he's like, "No guns." And in this movie, they walk into the orphanage, and Gordon has this like pump shotgun. He like pumps, and Batman's like, "No guns," and Gordon's like, "Yeah, man, that's your thing." I was like, brilliant.
And look, you mentioned it, the sort of mismatched buddy vibe. It was there. You felt like there was genuine humorous moments between these two. The moment when the bat signals there, I think it's actually Selena Kyle that's put it out. I think it says to him, "I thought it was you that put it up. Why be here? What's going on?" I thought Jeffrey Wright was absolutely outstanding as Gordon. He was one of the standout characters. I thought and you really sensed that passion, Stephen, from the actor. He was really, throughout the process of making this movie, he was looking into the source material from the golden years and stuff like that. He was fundamentally buying into this character, and I felt that really came through in the performance. Sorry, Steve.
I was just going to say about the whole escaping from the police station scene was fantastic as well. I thought they handled that really well. The way they was, "You're going to hit me, I'm going to give you the keys." You got that back door kind of thing. So there was humour in there, and I like that. It was very placed very well within a quite a dark film. Did it feel like a Pixies concert? I don't know about that.
That was
I'm not really
sure.
Said that. I'm not really sure about that. It felt more like Nirvana to me, but
something in the
Gianni touched on the whole sort of persona of Bruce Wayne as well. And I think it's because we didn't get a lot of Bruce Wayne in this film. You said it as well, John. I don't think there was enough.
No, there wasn't. No,
I do think for the storytelling point of view, there was just enough of it, because we are going to get more of Pattinson's Batman and Bruce Wayne anyway. Something I always liked about Christian Bale's performance as Bruce Wayne, not the Batman, but as Bruce Wayne, he played two different versions of Bruce Wayne. He played the billionaire playboy, and we've got to see the real, side of Bruce Wayne as well. And I thought he handled that very well. I think we're going to see that in Pattinson in the next movie. I think we're going to see him step up and be that billionaire playboy, and the public, but we will still see that the characteristics from the Batman, from Bruce Wayne in this movie and the second movie as well.
Yeah, there's always been three faces to Batman.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Three faces to Bruce Wayne. You've got Batman, he's the vigilante. Traditionally, people, as you said, Gianni, your friend said, he's almost the true version of the character. Yeah. Bruce Wayne's the facade. He's a sort of enabler for Batman to be able to do what he does. He brings the wealth in, he uses it for his vigilanteism. But I agree with you, Stephen. There's always that third face, which is a combination of the two. And the truth always lies somewhere in the middle. It's never grey or black or white. It's always a greyness in the middle. And I feel that's when you get a really good, compelling version of this character, that's where it lies, in the ability of the actor to balance these different facades and just get that sweet spot. And I feel I agree with you, Gianni. If I was to say there was one issue I would have with this movie, it probably would be that we didn't get enough. I mean, it was very much a Batman movie. It's titled The Batman, and it is a Batman movie. He is Batman for about 98% of this movie. And there's not a huge... That would be my one little gripe. You don't get a huge amount of Wayne. But I tell you...
He's also a very low-tech one as well, John.
Very low-tech. Yeah, very low-tech. There wasn't a huge amount of gadgets.
It's the first time I've ever seen Batman with a flashlight.
You said that.
Normally he's getting built into his eyes in some kind of...
You said that coming out the theatre.
I thought it was fantastic.
And when he jumps off the building, when he's cornered by the police and he's getting harried out the police station, he looks uneasy. It's as if he's not used this... It's almost like a base jumping.
Oh, it's like a squirrel. Yeah.
I liked that it was really practical. Like, I think that even in the Nolan movies, which were obviously very grounded, that's the one thing that everybody can really say about them as superhero movies, right? But even that, like, he still clicks something somewhere and, like, these eye things shoot over and it's got sonar vision or whatever the fuck it is, right? I loved that this was, like, he's standing on that rooftop and he's like, and he like pulls like the shoot thing, and it's like this actually, and you feel like the mechanisms were actually practical, and you could see them. And if they weren't practical to fit on his suit, then they were a literal flashlight or something like that.
It looked like it inflated at one point, and I thought, what's he going to do? Bounce his way off the building? I just thought it's going to be like a bouncy castle bouncing down the street.
Even the thing, the chest plate with the actual bat.
Yeah.
Logo or whatever you want to call it, the fact that doubled out and he clicked it in, I loved that. Just the fact it was like a magnet, I just loved it. There was a lot of people who had gripes with the more conventional sort of practical bat suit when it get released, the initial images. I always quite liked it because this is an early take on the character. He's still finding his way in this world, and that was almost manifesting in the suit itself. So I quite liked that, the fact that it was a very practical, conventional suit. And you see that in this movie. It works for this version of the character. It doesn't have to have whatever the hell that suit is that Ben Affleck's wearing to fight off Superman. There ain't no Superman in this universe that we know of yet. So I like the way they handled the character. For me, man, there was one moment, and I love this moment, by the way. We'll get into Giacchino's score. I love the score. I think the score's incredible. I've listened to it. I was listening to it last night. I just love the score. But there's one particular piece of music, I think it's For Your Pennyworth, and it's when Alfred obviously takes the blast, and I think that shakes Batman out of the vengeance mission for just a little moment. He's sitting at his bedside and he says, I actually get the quote, I've got the quote in my notes, I'll see if I can find it, because my memory's shit. I'll see if I can find it. I think he says, I never thought I'd feel like that again, and I think he says something like, of losing someone I care about, paraphrasing a bit there. But I loved that moment. I never thought I'd feel like that again. He confides in Alfred. He admits, look, I do care about you. And Alfred saying you needed a father, all you had was me. That interaction between those two in the hospital at the bedside, I thought that was great. That nearly brought out a little chink of Bruce Wayne I was wanting to see more of, this sort of vulnerability. We got it with Bale's Bruce Wayne. He had this fear, he had to overcome the fear, the well. It was always there. with him, this journey is of being a better human being and balancing the sort of playboy billionaire arsehole vibe with the Batman and trying to be this just Dark Knight, if you like. We get a little glimpse of it, I thought, in the hospital scene. I don't know what your thoughts were on that scene with Alfred in the hospital. Is that something you would have liked to see more of, that side of Bruce? Because he was a bit angsty teen, a bit flashing out. I'll do what I want to do. I don't want to go out and do business. I don't want to do work for the Wayne Enterprise, if that's even a thing in this universe, by the way. We don't see enough of it. He always felt like he was quite... I don't know, what would the word you'd use for a teen? He's not a teen, he's in his 20s in this, I presume. There's a word for it, impetulant.
I think his mindset was just totally focused on the mission, though, John.
Yeah,
that's one-track mind, to be fair to him. You know, everything else was sort of secondary. You
and
know,
he was almost not caring about guys like Alfred. He was taking him for granted until that moment, and then I think that shook him. And then obviously it plays in at the end with this finale in this arena, and he hears vengeance from one of Riddler's goons.
It took me by surprise, really, because I didn't expect it.
I thought he was going to die.
Andy Serkis, I thought as well, John.
I thought he was going to die. I was raging, by the way.
But I thought the actual scene itself was very emotional, and it took me by surprise only because Andy Serkis said in the weeks leading up to the film's release that don't expect the same relationship between Alfred and Bruce.
Yeah.
He's a very military-minded butler. He never said that, but it was words to that effect. That should never be used in a sentence. What I just said, a military-minded butler. That's a new superhero. I'm going to
military-minded butler.
But,
well, I mean, Mr. Deeds' butler is in this, John Turturro playing Falcone, and I tell you, he's absolutely great. And I was taken back to Mr. Deeds and the interactions with Adam Sandler, the thrusting at his foot.
I did not know why.
I don't know, man. I thought it was very much like Irons, Stephen. It was very similar to Jeremy Irons' take on the character. It was nowhere near the 90s version where it was this prim, proper English gentleman who was bringing out the silver platter. This was a more rugged, I keep using this word, practical Alfred. This guy had been around. He was almost like an SAS veteran. He'd protected his father and his mother. He was loyal to the family, and he was trying to use all of that to hone Bruce into something resembling a wholesome human being, but it never quite worked. Maybe because of the tragedy, maybe because of Bruce himself, and he was guilty of that. He had guilt, he harboured it. You've seen it. You needed a father, all you had was me. I thought people were worried about Andy Serkis. I was arguing with a guy on YouTube last night over Andy Serkis. He says it was a joke casting, almost as bad as Giacchino's score. I'm like, what are you talking about, mate? How can somebody be so wrong twice in the one sentence?
Marvel fan.
Not even a comma in there, man, and you've made two ridiculous statements. I thought Serkis was great in this. For the limited time, we don't get enough of him. That's another thing. But Gianni, sorry, I'll let you in, man. What was your thoughts? I don't even know what I'm asking you, Gianni. What was your thoughts on Alfred? You've already spoke about Batman and Bruce. What was your thoughts on Alfred? Did you have any thoughts on Alfred? Did we get enough Alfred?
I liked it. No, I don't think we got enough of it. I just think that it is tough for me. The Alfred Bruce relationship in the Dark Knight trilogy, I think, is the most underrated aspect of that trilogy. I think that their relationship is so superb and sublime, and everything about that. I mean, particularly in The Dark Knight Rises, when I think it really comes to a head and they're most at odds with each other, I think is when you see the deepest well of emotion in which how these two people relate and interact with each other. But I mean, ultimately, you get 3 scenes with Alfred in this movie, and I would say that the first has a lot of exposition, not just for the plot moving forward, but for their relationship as the audience is supposed to remember it for the other 2 scenes, really. And then the second scene also is bogged down by a lot of exposition, but it's very brief. And then the third one is this emotionally impactful one. And I think that, unfortunately, it was one of those scenes where you know, when you're watching something, you could recognize, this is emotional, but you don't really feel anything because the movie hasn't really saddled you with those 2 people for that length of time.
Yeah. Now,
granted, I think it was very well acted because they both clearly did a lot of the prep work of how they react to each other in the downtime between, I feel like they had a very clear idea of what that relationship was supposed to be, of this sort of stepfather guiding figure, trying to get his angsty teenager to connect with him more.
Yeah.
And I do think that, like, yeah, it's definitely by design that he is a bit like a teenager. I think that Reeves was definitely trying to draw attention to this idea that, trauma stunts growth. Like, at a certain point, you don't really grow up past what you've experienced. And though he is a much more mature man than he probably was when his parents died, he's certainly been stunted in a lot of ways. He's had to go through a lot of different things, being orphaned at such a young age. And I think that those things really rang true in that scene. The only other thing I don't like about that scene, though, because I like it, but the only other thing that gets in the way, I think, is there's a lot of plot that happens in that, like, 15 to 20 minute window where all of a sudden we learn about something from the news. Then Bruce goes to Falcone and learns something slightly different, and then goes immediately to Alfred and learns something different again. And it's like, it almost, like, as an audience member, I was like doing this. Like, I was just like experiencing like the whiplash.
And he bought it too. He bought it too readily.
I think that's very similar to what they did in The Last Jedi with the versions of Luke and Kylo Ren, Ben, their confrontation, where you had those three different versions, and they all came. Bang, bang, bang. Bang, bang, bang.
Yeah.
Right after each other. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you're like,
Maroni killed my father and my mother. No, it was Falcone. Okay, I'll buy both. It was like, come on, really, Bruce? And you're right, it's probably because he is being stunted emotionally on some level. And some level, he's still that 8-9-year-old kid or whatever age he was when his parents died. He's not really grown into being a fully fledged adult, a fully rounded adult. And I felt that throughout this movie. I felt he was... I don't know, there's something about Bruce was off. He just felt weird, man. He felt awkward. Very awkward.
Inexperienced.
Looking at his foot. Yeah. Look, man, the funeral scenes is probably the best example. He's out and about. He's out and about. Thinking about extras there right away. It was extras, wasn't it? He's out and about. And he's looking at his feet. He will not take... He just looks really awkward and really introverted. And it's a different take on this character. Because we've obviously Keaton's one. Mine's a bit hazy. I've not seen that movie in years, man. But I always felt he was menacing his way. And he had that darkness in his eyes. With Bale, he had this really flamboyant playboy frolicking about with the supermodels and the sort of fountain in this hotel. He was on steroids as Bruce Wayne. I've not really seen this take on Bruce Wayne, but he is this quiet, introverted sort of version of this philanthropist, for lack of a better word. It was different, man. It took a bit of getting used to for me in this movie. And he was gullible as hell.
It jumps back to, like, that thing that I said is, like, all the best villains are reflection of the hero. The one thing that I think you can really take away that I do think is really interesting and cool is, like, you look at Bruce Wayne in the funeral scene, and the one thing that he really reminds me of, in how very demure and how very, like, stoic he is, and how, like, completely, like, muted he is.
He barely reminds me.
He almost freaks me out that he's going to be like a shooter.
Yeah.
And I think that that's clearly designed that way. They really wanted it to feel like both of these dudes listen to Nirvana somewhere in the way, on repeat, alone, at night, like scribbling in journals. You know what I mean?
Jenny, listen, that's bang on, because I want to get into that, man. That connection between the Riddler and Wayne. You're absolutely nailed on in what you says there. This connection, the orphaned backstory, the way it shaped him. We spoke about it earlier, the yin, the yang, but you're absolutely right in what you says. There's always a degree of the villain and the hero and the villain, and that's why they always have this connection. They're drawn like magnets to each other. And I just thought the way they explored that with the vengeance thing, the way that shook him out of this stupor he was in, this desire, this lusty desire for vengeance. And obviously it kind of it begins with the revelation that Falcone killed, in a roundabout way, was responsible for the death of his parents. Because he had always, up until that point, had been on this vengeance trail to avenge his parents, who were just and good people in a city of corruption. He wanted to take down these bad guys and fight in the name of his, maybe vicariously through this vigilante, in the name of his parents. when he obviously gets that news, his parents weren't holier than thou. They were good people fundamentally, but they had the demons like everyone else. I think Alfred says that at one point as well. Everyone has the scars, something like that. That shakes him a bit. But then when obviously the Riddler's guy in the ground, the bastard that shoots him with a shotgun incident, that must have hurt. Jesus Christ. Impressive upper body strength. When he says vengeance, who are you? I think they ask him they ask him something and they say vengeance. Yeah. That's what finally shakes him out of it. He's like, Jesus, he's had this interaction with this crackpot guy in this cell. And he's seen the sort of similarities in their journey to this point. He's went off a different direction. This guy's a slightly more maniacal loner. And obviously these weirdos that are following him. When he hears his followers say vengeance, it's like, shit, I need to change.
I don't think Bruce realises his sort of influence that he's got over the public at this point in the story, though, John.
And that's why
and it nails it. It really does hit home in that scene. You're absolutely right.
That's why the monologue at the start was so powerful, and why the bookend at the end, he's a different man by the end of this movie, I feel. Because the vengeance thing that he speaks about, I am the shadows, I am having this impact on the criminals, I am fear. But he's also inspiring these weirdos to rise up and kind of be a darker, more twisted version of him and what he's doing. And I felt, in my mind anyway, I don't know if you've seen it the same way, when he said vengeance, it shakes him out of this vengeance mission. He goes down, he starts saving and guiding the people out with the light. I thought that was a powerful scene, by the way. He cuts it, he lands in the water, he's reborn, he comes out the water reborn. It's almost like a baptism. And he's a new man, he guides them out through the water. I thought that was a really powerful message that Reeves was sort of presenting, that you may be set in your way, you may be emotionally stunted by things that have happened in your life, but it's never too late to change. It's never too late to be a new person and grow. I thought it was a powerful moment, man. I enjoyed that aspect, but I don't know if you've seen it that way, Gianni, so maybe you can share your thoughts. Am I looking too deep into it again? I do this a lot. We were speaking about this yesterday.
I deep. I think you nailed what Reeves was going for. I think that scene, I would actually say the whole third act, and I think that the reason that I think the third act is the most divisive part of the movie for a lot of people. And I get why, because for 2 hours and like 20 minutes, the movie is a straight up like detective noir thriller. It's Seven, with the Batman in it. And then for that last chunk of it, they're like, I had a friend who said to me that they thought it was a studio reshoot, and I think that there may be something to that.
There was rumors of that. There was rumors.
Because, well, you think about it and you're like, I can totally see the studio coming in on that film after Riddler gets, arrested or whatever, and I think that maybe that scene in the cell plays out a little bit differently, and that might be essentially the end of the movie. And now, I still think that burying Gotham in the water, I think that was all planned, but I don't know if the whole action set piece, shooting the mirror and all that stuff, I don't think any of that was in there. And I think that the studio definitely was like, we need a big action scene. We need something for him to really come in and say, I'm the Batman, and the Batman kicks ass. And so it does feel a little tonally different. I would say that last act feels the most like the Nolan verse, because it's no longer a detective noir thriller. Now all the mystery's been solved. Now we just need to kick some fucking ass and take some names. And that's like,
and it was a great
it's cool. And it was fun, but I get why people are like a little divided about how they felt about, because they went into a detective Batman movie, and then 2 hours and 20 minutes, Matt Reeves is like, all right, now it's just a Batman movie. And you're like, all right, cool. But I mean, there's a few.
On you go. It's all good. On you go.
There's a few moments in that last. I think you definitely hit it for what Reeves was going for. A few moments in that last bit that I was like, I was a little lost in the sauce of, because I kept feeling like they were setting up something that then didn't get paid off. I
was waiting for a car chase. Waiting for a car chase. Someone says it ended with a car chase. I'm like, when's this car chase?
He's gonna bring out the Batmobile again. get all the water out of there or something. I don't know. Like he's got a tankard on the Batmobile, whatever it is. But I mean,
Ruth mentioned James Bond. Maybe he had a jet. I don't know how that was going to work. But I was waiting on it. I'm like, what?
I expected a submarine or something.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. But anyway, he's got this stuff. He injects it into his leg, which I guess is supposed to be venom. I'm sure it's a tease for a sequel where he's gonna have some loose connection to Bane at some point, something like that. Whatever. And that's fine. I think that's a cool tease. I think it was like, oh, is that venom? Is that supposed to be venom? I wonder what that is.
We had that fierce amount of rage.
They set up some expectations, right? So like he's pummeling this dude in the face, and the expectation is like, oh, this is the moment when he's gone too far. And then they pull him off, and the guy's like, fine. And not only that, but he's fine, and he's like, I'm vengeance. And it clearly affects the Batman in some way. And then he has this jump in, and I think that this is the moment when I was like, I get it that it's like supposed to be him, like his baptism is supposed to be reborn, but it plays to the audience like it's his sacrifice, like he's going to sacrifice himself into the water.
Did you find it weird, by the way, when he cut it? I'm like, what's he doing?
Yeah, it's
I watched it. I'm like, what is he doing? I realised what he was doing when he came out of the water, but I'm like, why is he falling like that?
It's like, wait a second, he didn't die? And then the only other thing that bugs me about that scene, there's one other thing that just drives me nuts, is the mayor at this point, she's been shot.
Fucking in the water.
She's deep in the water, and she's got this like great thing on top of her blocking her from getting out. And the Batman comes over, and he lifts it out of the way. And she, who has been shot and needs desperate medical attention, looks at him and is like, I don't know about you though. and then the kid takes his hand, and then she's like, okay, I guess. I'm like, why do you don't overcomplicate? Just get out of the water.
I tell you what, man, she gets shot in the stomach as well. That's a bad place to get shot. There'd be a lot of profuse bleeding coming out of that wound.
Death right there. Get out of the water.
How did they end up in the water, by the way? Because she was behind that stage. The water busts through that end, and it pushes that stage right to the other side of the arena.
Fell? I don't know.
How did she? It was fortuitous getting stuck behind that metal rigging. That's what I was saying. That was almost like the rocks that George Lucas CGI'd in front of R2D2. It's like, how did you get out of there? It's like it didn't make sense to me how they ended up pinned as a group in that area. But you can nitpick like hell, man. When these moments, I try to suspend my disbelief when I'm watching things like that. But when you do think back, you're like, what? How? Why did they fall like this?
It's for
convenience. I mean, Serena Kyle came up the ladders. Why didn't he just get down the ladders? If they're going to die within 20 seconds, they're not worth saving anyway. You don't have to fall like that, especially hanging onto an electrical cable that's clearly sparking. It may have some residual energy and shock you in the water. Don't do it, Bruce. But yeah, this is Bruce Wayne though. He's a bit of a dumb shit at times.
Yeah.
Is that right? I don't know.
Like, at the end of the day, you're right though. That shot, which we've seen in the trailer, but it's just all the more impactful in the movie, where he like shepherds them out of out of that.
Gianni, the whole time we've had people over here, and they deserve to lose hands with flares. And I'm always nervous as hell when I see people holding a flare. It's like, don't do it. I say they deserve to because they're from a certain. Yeah, I'm not getting it.
You're gonna kill it.
They deserved it. They were idiots. They lost a hand to a flare. Don't pick a flare up. But it's clearly not homemade. That's what I'll say. Going a bit partridge here. Look, we'll get any standout moments here, man. Before we get into performances and round this review up, we're coming to the end. I'm sure you'll be glad to hear people watching. If you are watching, I've not got numbers on me. Standout moments for me, I mentioned the funeral scene. If it's even a funeral, it was a sort of memorial scene. I just thought that was great. You get to see Bruce Wayne out. You've got the hangers on, try to do deals with him and use him for his status. This interaction with the mobsters, it's awkward as hell. It's hinting at this link with Falcone. His father saved him all those years ago. Hinting before we even get the reveal that he had a debt to pay and he paid off the debt, maybe went a bit too far and then used it to abuse his relationship with the Waynes, yada yada yada. There was lots going on in that scene. Just the tension between him and the DA, the riddles. You never at any point thought that this guy was going to get saved. I always felt that Riddler was playing him like an absolute fool. And he knew that at the end he was going to try and out who the rat was and that he wouldn't go that far because it would put his family in jeopardy. I just loved that whole scene. I thought it was great. And you mentioned it, Gianni, and the hero within the villain within the hero. There's always elements. The sort of flipping of it. You see the Riddler at the end. He's this nervous, weak little fool in a sense. He's just a little dweep. That's the word we use. He's bespectacled. He's a dweep. He's pathetic. But when he puts on the mask, he puts on that field jacket, he's powerful. He's choking people out. He's hitting people with blunt objects. He's standing in this upper section of this church, and he's the powerful man here. He's got control over the situation. And Bruce is Bruce, and he's shy and introverted and a bit awkward, and he feels out of place. He then comes back, and he's Batman. And just that, I just loved it. You see the two sides of this guy. He's a totally different beast when he's got the suit on. I just loved the way that scene was created. I really enjoyed that sequence. It had everything for me. The blast was powerful. How he didn't have a mark on him as a modern day miracle. Again, this is Bruce Wayne though. He didn't have anything on his lower part of his face. How was he not like Harvey Tooth? Harvey Two-Face.
I was willing to forgive them for the lack of scarring or burning here, because I thought they were going to kill Alfred, but there's now two men who survived from explosions happening in very close proximity.
At least Alfred threw the bomb across the room. Bruce literally took it right in the face. He took it in the face. Not a mark. Not a mark. He's flying off a building 10 minutes later. Have you got a standout scene?
That scene is amazing.
Have you got a standout scene, Stephen?
You know something? I don't have a standout scene at all. Not in a negative way. It was more interaction for me that was sort of the standouts for me. You know, the interaction between Batman and Selina Kyle. Every scene for me was just well acted between both Pattinson and Kravitz, and also the interactions between Pattinson and Jeffrey Wright. Just every scene that we're in, they owned it, and it was just very interesting to see the dynamics between these actors in those particular scenes. For me, I could be very lazy and say the car chase scene. You know, a great action. It was fantastic.
It was fantastic, man.
The only gripe I've got with that is I think we've seen most of it in all the trailers and TV spots.
And the ramp.
That was a great for me, was the sort of promotion of this film, if I'm nitpicking, was the trailers. They showed far too much, I felt, because once you see the film, you went, I've seen this bit, and this is a great car chase as well, but I've seen most of it in the trailers and the TV, particularly TV spots here in the UK. I felt they overexposed it a bit. But for me,
and the convenience of the ramp, Stephen, appearing just in time for him to flip right over those sort of trails. It's like, okay, that was lucky,
I don't mind that,
wasn't it, Bruce?
But it's pleasing on the eye, isn't it?
Yeah,
but
it was.
I don't think there was any particular scene that stood out for me that I would say was better than another one. For me, it was more about the performances within scenes that I really enjoyed. The nightclub scenes were fantastic as well.
Oh, Steve, I was going to mention that.
Batman, the twins that came to the door. Oh, yeah. Just that whole interaction was fantastic.
You know, Stockman mentioned that, Stephen.
Yeah.
He says there was three different versions of that club scene.
Yeah.
The first time it's Batman, he goes in, he just beats them. He beats the shit out of them. Second time it's Bruce Wayne. And they're like, oh wow, yeah, come in. They're kind of know of this the persona. This is Bruce Wayne, bring him in. The third time he just sneaks by them. It's almost like the character personified in this one moment, this interaction with these twins. He beats the shit, he's awkward, he uses his persona to get by, and then he sneaks by. It's like, this is this character. I love that first club scene as well. When he goes in, it falls, it's a tracking shot of him walking in, the club opens up. Just the way he's using...
Similar to the Dark Knight's, the Maroni scene, if I'm choosing the right film here.
Just lighting.
Yeah, just that flashing light.
It was great, man. The sound as well was brilliant.
Guys up, but it was fantastic.
I tell you what, Matt Reeves. Sorry, I'll let you in a minute, Gianni. Sorry, I just have to get this off my chest. This kind of shows up, Christopher, and I love Christopher Nolan, man. Arguably, probably my favourite director, modern day. Well, I don't know about that. He's one of them anyway. One of my favourite modern day directors. But no one has got this fetish with sound design, where he just blows the dialogue to fucking smithereens with the score, and it's like, what is he saying? Like the exposition scene with Pattinson, he's trying to explain the sort of science behind this reverse and all that. That's completely unnecessary. You see it in this, you can hear the dialogue, and it's still booming. You can get the mixing right. Nolan, get your shit together, mate. Reeves has shown you up.
Yeah.
But if you guys...
I've been watching everything with subtitles ever since I saw Tenet, so I'm with you on that.
My first showing was fine with Tenet, and then the second one was really bad. The first one I think was in a View, it was fine. Second one I think was in a Cineworld. It may have been another View.
It was a View. It was the one I went.
It was god awful. One, I couldn't hear a word. So it seemed to be different theatres, but not. His mixing's terrible. But sorry, Gianni, if you get any standout sequences in this movie, anything that just catches your fancy, if you'd like, mate, it could be anything. It could be an action moment, it could be a quiet, introspective moment, if there was one. Anything.
The peeping Tom moment.
Sorry?
Oh, yeah.
The peeping Tom moment.
That was a choice. I obviously loved that funeral scene. I thought that was so brilliant. I would totally agree with you. Love the car chase. What's not to love about the car chase? It's just filmed so miraculously well, almost. I loved the camera off the side of each of the cars.
I'll ask you a question about that car chase in a moment, Jenny, because I know you'll have an opinion on it, maybe. I'm going to give you 3 car chases from different movies, and I'll get you to pick your favourite.
Oh, okay, yeah, I like this. Yeah. Okay,
Bullet.
No, I guess to add one that hasn't been mentioned is, I guess, that last interrogation scene where they get to really come to this. I think it's absolutely brilliant. I think you get the breadth of that performance from Dano in there. I love the frustration of Pattinson feeling like he's been bested. And what I think is so bold about this movie is that ultimately it ends. I was comparing it as an ending to The Empire Strikes Back, where you feel like the heroes have lost. They've learned about themselves, though, so they've won in a sense.
Yeah.
But they've lost ostensibly in this overall fight. And it feels like it's setting up for more to come. And I think that that's a really cool way to leave the Batman. And I think it's really bold to have the Batman end with it being the legacy of the Batman is now a thing. That was the character arc. That was the journey, is to now cement him as the cultural zeitgeist of Gotham City, while also having Gotham City be buried underwater. Yep. That's a bold thing. I think that's cool.
It is. And this is why I love Reeves, because he will go there. Where maybe another director doesn't have the foresight to do something like that. It's very conventional 3-act story over 3 movies. If we're getting 3 movies, by the way, I like to have movies function as a standalone entity. And I felt no one did do that, to be fair, with the Dark Knight trilogy. Batman Begins functions as a single story. Dark Knight functions as a single story. Dark Knight Rises isn't anywhere near as good, but still kind of functions as a single story. So I think this movie functions as a single story, so that's always something I enjoy. And we spoke about Dune, or Dune, as some people say. Both are right.
Yeah.
There's no right or wrong here. That functions as a single story, despite being part of a duology, if you like, of stories. But yeah, the chase sequence, I'll ask you this briefly, man. Have you seen Bullet?
Bullet,
Steve McQueen. Oh, that's not going to work then.
Shoot.
Bullet's amazing. What? Just search up the chase sequence. Bullet from Bullet. Bulli, I think TT or 1T.
Yeah.
Bullet. Fucking incredible. That's the best. So I'm not even. I'm going to continue with this. Mission Impossible Fallout has a great chase sequence as well. Have you seen that car sequence? The Paris.
Love that.
That or this, then I'll ask you those 2. Which one's better, this or that one? Because they are kinda in the last 5 years, I want to say.
Is it Fallout that has that sequence?
Is it Fallout?
Is it Rogue Mission?
Fallout has the Paris one with the motorcycle. Tom Cruise is zipping through the little side streets of Paris. It was incredible. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and he ends up, he gets crashed into the car, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Incredible, man. I'm looking off in tangents here.
I think that what's so cool about the Reeves one is that, well, for one, I think that what's amazing, you talk about how Batman uses fear in every aspect of his whole thing, where we were comparing, it's not just that he's in the shadows, he uses the shadows. The large, heavy footfalls.
Yeah.
Stalking closer and closer towards the enemy, right? And I think he does the same thing in a car. They make this car loud as
fuck. The car as well, man, it was incredible.
It blowing
felt like
out
a fucking rocket when it started up.
It's a huge muscle car, and it's exactly in line with how they established that character. So I mean, I don't know if I could pick a favorite over each of them, but I guess because only because Mission Impossible Fallout also has that skydiving sequence.
Oh God, yeah.
Like they don't need another
Thunderstorm.
accolade. They have all the best stuff already.
That was a joke, by the way. I still to this day think they shot that real time. I don't know if it was it must have been CG, but that was unbelievable. And that's why I just do not tolerate people bad mouthing Henry Cavill. They're fools. This guy can do action, he can do it well, and he can do drama. He did a suited sort of Bond kind of movie, didn't he? What was that called? That Bond movie?
The Man from U.N.C.L.E.
The Man from U.N.C.L.E. I've not seen it. I need to watch it. I need to watch that movie. So I get off in tangents again. Sorry.
If you like that, you'll like that one.
Oh yeah. I need to hang it. I need to give it a bash and watch it because people are saying he should be Bond, and I'm like, I still want him to be Superman, but we'll see. I want a Scotsman to be the next Bond, but we're going off in tangents here. Apologies. I do that. That happens at this time of night.
Dominic Morning, get your Bond suit ready. Get him in there.
I still want Sam Heughan to be Bond.
Oh yeah,
he's a big 6'2" Scottish guy. He wears a suit very well. Richard Mann's a bit too short to be Bond. If Craig was short to be Bond, then Madden definitely is. He's too rough to be Bond. Sam Heughan for me should be the next Bond. But I digress. We'll get into that another day. I'm absolutely certain. I speak about Bond a lot. Yeah. For somebody that's not a self-admitted big Bond fan, if you like. Performances in this movie, man. Performances, before we get into... briefly touch about the score as well. We fucking love the score. There you go. That's me touched on the score.
Yeah, it was good.
The themes were brilliant. The Batman theme, Stephen didn't like it quite as much as me. Thought it was a rip-off of Something in the Way.
Yeah,
I loved it though as a whole.
They were all in that sequence.
Funny, I thought it was a rip-off of the Vader's theme song.
Yeah,
it has the same I still loved it. I think it's a great.
It swells. It swells to the end, and it's very powerful at the end. I quite liked it. But he's got a sonata in this. Brilliant. He's got a fucking sonata in this score. For me, that this should get an Oscar nomination. This score, just for having the balls to put a sonata in a film score, is enough for me. But as I says, for what's it called again? For its pennyworth, I loved that. There's little clarinet moments in there. I'm a classical music guy. You wouldn't think it wearing this. I love classical music, man. I love Strauss. I love Chopin, Mozart. I love them all. So Tchaikovsky, whoever did the Flower Waltz.
Giacchino, he has a style, he has a fashion. You hear one of his scores, you know it's him. There was moments in it that did remind me of Rogue One. I think that's where it probably does bother me a little bit. But I think they've all got their trademarks. You know, John Williams. They're actually saying he
was the heir apparent to John Williams. Yeah,
I don't know about that. I don't know.
No one's John Williams, sadly. Yeah, no one can be another composer. You've got your own.
Well, they've got their own mark, yeah.
But yeah, I love the score. The Catwoman score was great. The Riddler score was great. There was just some great moments in there. It really enhanced the emotive moments. It enhanced the sort of raw action moments. And that's what a good score should do. So I think that Giacchino done a brilliant job. And that bitch on YouTube, it says he was a terrible choice. Bolt, as we say here.
Bolt your rocket.
Bugger off. Bolt your rocket. Performances. If you get a standout performance, I'll go to Gianni first. Who was your standout performance? Because I thought there was a lot of good performances in here. A hell of a lot of good performances. Who would you say was your standout? I'm intrigued to hear.
I'm going to go with probably the underrated choice. I'm going to say John Turturro was my standout performance. I loved all the performances in the movie. But John Turturro, there was something about, I had said it earlier, but it's just like the way that he commanded so much presence, so much fear in particular, from a seemingly innocuous set of dialogue. He was a truly, truly menacing and imposing figure with very, very little in the way of like doing anything actively menacing. He has one scene where he is actively fighting for his life. Everything else he does from like a very like almost like statuesque sort of persona. Yeah. And I think that those are the most chilling villains in my mind. And I love too the way that they film him. I think it's brilliant, particularly when they're introducing him in that opening scene when Selena Kyle sees him for the first time, because they just catch like through the like optical lens like this sort of distorted fisheye view of him as she's like very close, as he's like almost like obscenely close to her person in like a way that feels way too intimate that obviously makes Bruce uncomfortable, and Selena uncomfortable for that matter. And I think that
his hands look massive, by the way. His hands look gigantic.
He's a big guy. I think he's a huge guy.
He's like 10-inch hands or something, man. This guy's hands were gigantic. It was like Andre the Giant, as if we say Peter Andre. He's a small guy.
I think Turturro's just always been like a super underrated performer, even in the work that has gotten him his like Emmy accolades. I think that he's still just not looked down upon, but I think that he's sort of forgotten about. And I think that he is one of the most versatile actors in this film and in Hollywood as a whole. So that's my pick.
Stephen?
Paul Dano for me. Paul Dano. And I know Stephen? That perhaps, it wasn't really till perhaps that interrogation scene at the very end we really got to see him acting his pants off. But throughout the film, his presence, everything about him, his performance and his tone was just mesmerising for me. And I think it was everything I expected from Paul Dano. I've been saying his name wrong. I know I've been saying his name wrong. Dano. And I think,
where's he from?
He's from the US, is he not?
Is he?
I think he is, yeah.
Yeah, he's
Dano.
Yeah, Dano it is.
I'll change.
Sorry about that. And it was everything I expected, John. You actually, I think it was yourself, the film he did with Daniel Radcliffe.
Yeah, Swiss Army Man.
Yeah,
that was him, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was my introduction to him.
Mental.
And I just, ever since then, he's just caught my eye. And I saw him in the Love and Mercy film as well, playing Brian Wilson. And it's one of my favourite music biopics. It's not even for John Cusack, who's also in the film, who plays the later version of Brian Wilson. It was Dano's performance. I'll get there. His performance of the early years of Brian Wilson was absolutely amazing. It was always a period in Brian Wilson's life that I was so interested in, and he just acted his chops off in that film. But for me, it's just that creepy vibe of him throughout the movie, and it's everything I expected from this portrayal of the Riddler that we got in the trailers. It absolutely nailed it for me. Also, I think Peter Sarsgaard, although it was very limited, I thought he was very good, especially in that funeral scene.
Yeah,
I thought it was absolutely amazing. Very limited time on the screen, but knocked out of the park as well. But for me, it is Dano.
Yeah, it's difficult for me because I actually mentioned Turturro when I was watching the movie, and I mentioned Colin Farrell, and for me it gave me vibes of like a mobster movie.
Yeah.
Also, they are mobsters, so that's a stupid thing to say, but they gave me vibes of like Godfather. It was that kind of vibe. I can imagine him playing Sonny Corleone or something like that. It was from that sort of ballpark, the performance. And I thought he'd done a fantastic job, Turturro, so much so that during the movie I'm like, what, it was Sarsgaard that was playing Falcone. I had fought for months on end. It was Sarsgaard. I'm like, it's John Turturro, I'm talking crap. I'm like, he's brilliant. Loved him. He was the butler in Mr. Deeds.
Ruth says that movie. Paul Dano is the best Riddler to date in Ruth's opinion. I can't disagree with that.
You're reading from there, Steve?
No, I'm reading from I'm not that good, John. But there was only one line missing, and that was obviously, do you like the jacket? It keeps me safe when I'm jogging at night.
For me, look, it's a toss-up between Turturro and Dano as well. I love Pattinson, man. I'm a huge champion for Pattinson. Huge champion so much I can't even say his name.
I'm getting slagged for saying Dano.
I'm a huge World War II fan, so I've got General Patton in my head. I'm a huge champion for this guy, but and I hated the blowback of his cast, and I hate these little internet basement dwellers who only think of the first thing. Oh, Twilight, you can't play Batman. He's a vampire from Twilight. Yeah, it was 12 years ago, man. 10 years ago. That's a decade. That's a huge amount of time. Guy's in his mid-30s now. He's developed. He's worked with some of the best independent film directors on the planet, man. And he's got a legit fucking incredible career up until this point, man.
John, there was ones that said the same about Christian Bale. What, the kid from Empire of the Sun? Come on!
Empire of the Sun. Loved that movie. Yeah. I used to watch that all the time. That was a kind of movie my grandfather would watch, by the way. But man, Peter's so quick to judge and get a hot take, to use the sort of buzzword they use on Twitter, I'm sure, and places like that. And I'm like, come on, give him a chance. And to be fair to Bale, he did give him a chance. He says, look, let the guy put his imprint on this character. He's a great actor, he'll do great. I thought he did do well, I thought he done brilliant, but just not enough Bruce Wayne for me to allow him to sink his teeth into it. And there's always that issue, that disconnect when you have a mask on. Look, Pedro Pascal does a great job of it with Mandalorian. You almost get a sense about that character's his expressions with a helmet on.
Yeah.
So there's always that disconnect for me. And you mentioned it with Dano. There was a disconnect when he had the helmet on. He really got to flex his acting muscles in that interrogation scene at the end. We never really get that moment with Robert Pattinson's Batman. And look, it's a Batman movie, I understand it, and he's still done a great job. He's not quite Bale Batman for me, but he's done a great job. But he didn't do a good enough job to get the best performance. So for me, if you were to twist my arm, I'd probably go Dano, just because he's a big personality. He's there. He's the main man in terms of villain, but I did like Turturro as well, so I'm going to sit in the fence and put it to him. And if anybody's getting to say about it, fuck off. I digress. Have we got anything else to talk about? Final thoughts in this movie? We're going to do a wee rating. Where are we rating this? Maybe top 5 Batman movies. Where are you putting this? I know Stephen's broke out a list. I haven't quite done that, but I can give you mine anyway off the top of my head.
Check out Stephen John, 1976.
Yeah, I saw Steven's list. It's a good list. I think that if Batman and Robin is not at the bottom of everybody's list, is probably not a good list. And I don't know where I'm allowed to put Mask of the Phantasm, but it would definitely be in the upper tier there.
You're allowed to put it wherever you want to put it, Gianni. It's your list. If you want to put it number one, put it number one. Because I always blow back against people with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. They'll say, it's not a proper film. Second best Spider-Man movie ever for me.
Into the Spider-Verse is my favorite Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, it's just so zany, isn't it? It's brilliant. It's the different take. I love it. I love it when they take a character you've grown up with and they do something different with it. It's just to the point where I want Morales live action. And I even know who to cast. There you go.
I know who I would cast.
I'd cast the guy for I'd cast the guy for Detective Pokemon. Or Pikachu, whatever the hell it is. I'd cast him. I like
Detective Pikachu also. I think that movie gets a bum rap.
I like it. That's good. Yeah.
I think for my ranking of these, I would probably put this third. This would probably be under Batman Begins and The Dark Knight for me.
Fair. Yeah.
I really like this movie. I'm super excited for whatever the sequel comes next. But I mean, Batman Begins, it has, like, Bruce Wayne has probably the best arc. In this, I would say it probably has the best Batman arc, but it certainly doesn't have enough Bruce Wayne to have any sort of arc there. But I think that there's plenty of potential for this particular universe to grow out. Yeah. And I'm super excited to see what comes next from it.
You've twisted my arm there, Gianni. I'm now going to go with, obviously, The Dark Knight's number one still. It has to be. But I love Batman Begins, man. Yeah. There's something about the journey, as you mentioned, of Bruce Wayne. And just that line at the end, I don't have to kill you, but I won't kill you, but I don't have to save you. I'm probably butchering that. But that moment with Ra's al Ghul, where he opens the cape up and drifts out the train carriage, I thought that was... what a journey that is. But that's known.
Amusing, but pointless.
That, for me, is a fantastic film. So that is still number 2. And then I'm going to go The Batman. I nearly had a stroke trying to think of that. I'm talking about it for fucking 2 hours. Yeah. I've got it in front of me and I nearly forgot the Batman there. That's concerning. That is early onset dementia. That is a spark to me, Riddler in the brain. For me, it would be The Dark Knight, Batman Begins, this. Probably Batman 1989. And then I'd go Dark Knight Rises maybe, or Batman Forever.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe the second one. What was the second one? Dark Knight Batman Returns.
Yeah.
Forever.
Batman Returns.
Maybe that one then. The Dark Knight Rises. I'll pick 6. Shite at maths. What's yours, Stephen? Before we go into rating this,
check it out on Twitter. I'm not going through it again. I put The Dark Knight at number 1. I put The Batman at number 2, and Batman Begins at number 3.
There you go.
But the full list you can check out on my Twitter handle at StephenJohn76.
The Gianni's gave his final thoughts in this movie, and he succinctly plotted it, for lack of a better turn of phrase. I'll give my final thoughts. I really enjoyed the movie. There is gripes in there that, speaking about it for 2 hours, have now came to the surface. Initially going into this review, before we even phoned you, Gianni, I says, video calls you on Discord. I says, I couldn't really find any gripes for this. There's not anything I'd change. But it's incredible. We've spoke to Ruth, who's in the chat, about this when we discuss lots of great movies we had in the past 6 months to a year. It's incredible what speaking about a movie with different people and getting their opinion on it, how that can shape and change the way you view a movie. And certainly the Bruce Wayne stuff, not having enough Bruce Wayne in there, and just little moments. There is things that change about it, but for me it was a great watch. It was 3 hours, it felt like 2, maybe 2.5 hours long. That's always the signs of a good movie, and that you've done something right.
I think the other signs of a good movie is a movie that can sit as a standalone film and doesn't require any sequels to continue the story.
Yeah.
But also a film that can leave enough room there and sort of clues that it can follow on from the first film.
Yeah.
And that did that.
What are we rating it, man? Shall I go first?
Yeah.
I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. There you go. I've knocked it down 1.5 marks.
Wow.
I'll give it a 9. There you go. Yeah. You've twisted your arm. You're laughing at me. I'll give it a 9. 8.5. Fuck it. 8.5 out of 10. It's very good. It's excellent. Come on. Who are you laughing at, Stephen? It's excellent.
You were adamant it was a 10 out of 10.
It's an 8.5. Stephen, The Dark Knight's a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, exactly.
And I can't have a Dark Knight number 1 and rate this 2 movies below
exactly.
it.
That's why I'm rating this 9 out of 10. Because The Dark Knight's 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Batman Begins is 8 out of 10.
Yeah, there you go.
Funny.
That's fine. Gianni, are you going to rate this in a 10 scale? I don't know how you rate movies, man. Do you even rate movies? Do you believe in that? Put it on a numerical system?
I do. I love numerical systems. I mean,
did you not check his list out, John? He rated every film.
I don't go on social media, man. I'd stay away from it. It depresses me, especially with this Russia shit going on just now. It just sucks the fucking energy out of my body. I'm like an empty husk. I'm like a doom-monger. I just get drawn to this shit, and I see bodies getting burnt to a crisp. It's like I have to step away. So I stepped away. It's not good. I don't want to bring your tone down.
I'm a supporter of that. Take care of yourself. No, you know what you need. And what I need is a good rating, and I work on an 100-point scale. So, and it's like probably a bit ridiculous. Everybody will see me. I'll give. I think there was like a Twilight movie that I gave like a something 0.1, and everybody was like 0.1. And I was like, I promise you, it makes sense.
I've never watched it.
It's not a 5.
I have never watched a Twilight movie, so more the power to you, Gianni, for putting yourself through that. I draw the line at Harry Potter. Are you aware of a franchise called Maze Runner, by the way? Have you watched that? Because I went to a movie theatre not that long ago, and they were presenting a trailer, and it's like, what the fuck is this? There's a franchise? How long's this been out? How have I missed this? That's what Twilight's like for me. Maze Runner.
Maze Runner was one of those like a slew of movies that they were trying to capitalize on that young adult thing that was really popular at Twilight. That Divergent was another one as well. Hunger Games was another one as well.
Yeah, Hunger Games, never seen.
The host was Saoirse Ronan. That was another one. That
I heard of that
one. Mortal Engines, whatever that one was. That was also trying to do this.
What was the one with the huge moving cities?
Oh yeah,
that was shite. That wasn't good. But get off in tangents. That was crap.
I just remember the trailer. But yeah, no, I would give. Sorry, the Batman. Probably 8.8 for me. I'm right in the sweet spot.
Give it the lowest rating. I feel like I have to bump it up there.
That's on you, John.
No, I feel harsh. It feels harsh now. If we're doing point and we're doing numerical proper, and it's not just 8.5 to round it up, I'll go with you. I'll go 8.8. Yeah, it feels harsh. It feels harsh there at 8.5.
Yeah, it'll make you feel much happier about the world.
Yeah, well, yeah, that'll be you, man. I'll go with you. 8.8. Yeah. And if you go 100 point, that's 8.8, isn't it? Really? So it feels fair. Yeah.
I always say I give 0.3 of leeway either direction. So it just depends on like if I feel it, I'm like really in the sour mood. It's 0.3 lower than that.
Yeah. Ruth says, and I'm struggling to read this, Ruth, that's why I've been staying away from the comments. I really am. I should be wearing glasses because I'm a fucking bat from about 8 feet forward. I think that's Mortal Instruments. Is that the name of that movie? Is that
what I was thinking? Thank you so much, Ruth.
Yeah, Mortal Instruments, yeah. There you go. But look, that's going to round it up. We're done.
Yeah.
Speaking about this movie, I don't know how long we've been on. I feel it's been a while.
2 hours, I think.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. I like talking. I says that today. I love talking. I get told all the time, why do you like talking so much? Can you not just shut up? I'm like, no, I can't. Sometimes I'm indecipherable people can't really understand me, most of the world it seems. But I just love talking, so I'm not going to stop doing it. Fuck you. It's like Rage Against the Machine. As a Rage Against the Machine, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me.
Yeah, that's it. Killing in the Name.
Killing in the Name. Yes, see, that's a band I can get on with. We were speaking about them the other day as well, going off on a tangent. One final one. 30 years ago, man, that first album.
Yep.
The core elements they were touching upon, it's still relevant today.
Yeah.
Control from governments and stuff like that, intruding in people's lives, technology. What a fucking guy. Jake De La Rocha, something like that. What a guy. Tom Morello, what a guy. Anyway, I digress, that's going to round it up. What is your thoughts on the Batman? Have you been to see the Batman? If you haven't, you really shouldn't be in here because it is spoiler, and we've pretty much just touched upon the entire movie, so that will be it ruined for you. If you have been to see the Batman and you've managed to get through the 2 hours, and you really should because it's fucking good discussion we're having here, what is your take on the review, on points in the movie that you liked, maybe disliked, gripes you had, standout performance, all that stuff we've touched on? You can comment below if you feel compelled to share your thoughts, and put them down below in the comments section. You can also like the video if you've enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon to get notifications for your eyeballs. It's very moment we do something like this, so there'll be something in the future. I don't know what's coming out. I stay away from calendars and movie releases. I think it may be something like Nope, maybe that coming out next. Something else, there was something we reacted to, Bullet Train, cannot wait to see that. I was saying, stick around if we'd maybe touch upon that at some point. Stick around. You can also hit the follow button over on Twitch if you've enjoyed it over there. I don't know if there's anyone even over there because I don't look at Twitch when I'm on. I'll have a wee look just now, and yes, I did say we because that's the way we talk over here. Is there anybody watching us on Twitch? Anybody? No, there's not. There's one person. That one person, thank you for watching us. Hit the follow button over there. Regardless of what you do though, thank you very much for watching, and until the next time we are all done, I don't know if I'll be able to do this. I may have to go here. Oh, we're getting the intro. Bye bye guys. Look at that. Look at the professionalism here. There's a Batman logo at the top. Bye guys. If I didn't say bye, thank you very much for coming in. Thank you Elevator Not Worthy, I think it was. Thank you Mike. Thank you everybody for coming in and commenting. We do appreciate it. Bye guys.